Before we get to today's episode of 80 More Things, I just wanted to pop in here with a quick disclaimer. The purpose of this podcast is to give people in the community a place to express their opinions and their voice. I just want to be clear that the opinions of our guests are theirs and that Julie and I may or may not agree with their point of view. With that, let's get started.
I could go on listing things off, 80 more things. I just keep on singing these songs till Avery's freedom rings. I said it matters, it really does, I know it matters. This could be you, I said it matters. This could be me, I said it matters.
Welcome to 80 More Things, where we go beyond making a murderer and discuss questionable details of the Teresa Halbach murder case. My name is Fen. You can find me on Twitter at FenMN. You were just listening to Stacy Seabrook reminding us to keep talking about this case, which is what we intend to do. I will post Stacy's links in the show notes. Please go check out his channel on YouTube. He has so many insightful things to say. If you haven't yet watched the Netflix series Making a Murderer, stop listening to this podcast right now and go watch both seasons before joining us here, or a lot of this really won't make any sense to you. I also want to remind everyone to go to bringbrendanhome.org and listen to Brendan and Laura Nyrider's interview with Jason Flom on the Wrongful Conviction podcast. Then you can make your voice heard by signing the petition at the bottom of the page. If you support Brendan, that is a good way to show it. Last I heard, they were up to 20,000 signatures, so go make yours one of them. As always, I'm joined here by my co-host, Julie, aka Julie Pom Pom. She is Juju Pom Pom on Twitter, so you can follow her there. Hello, Julie.
Hi, Fen.
Today we're going to talk about day 59 of the 80 Days of 80 More Things, and I'll read that tweet to you in a minute. Our guest today is a fellow truther named Mitch, who is at Team Stockdale, at Team Stockdale on Twitter, where we have been connected for quite a while. And Mitch works in the mental health field, and he's an officer of the court in the state of Ohio. He's been able to have some detailed conversation with judges, police officers, and others in his field, and he has some interesting insights to share with us about this case. So I'm very happy to welcome our friend Mitch to the 80 More Things podcast. Hi, Mitch.
Hey, Fen, how are you?
Good, good.
Hey, Pom Pom.
Hi.
So before we get to day 59 and talking about that, I just want to ask you, Mitch, how did you first become interested in this case?
Well, I didn't start watching it originally when it came on Netflix there in December of 15, I believe that's when it premiered. I read about it on the internet through Google over the couple months afterwards as well, and saw the interest and saw that it was the #1 watched documentary on Netflix at the time. So my wife and I turned it on a Saturday morning, and I remember we were immediately glued, and we watched the entire first season that day. And right from the get-go, for chapter 1 there, something was wrong. It just didn't add up right from the beginning. And afterwards, we're both just like nodding our heads and saying, there's something very, very wrong going on here. So that just immediately drew my interest, and I joined Twitter shortly after. And one of our friends out there in Twitter world by the name of Truth Seeker got me onto the thread. And that's how I got to know you and everybody, and I've been a part of it ever since.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that, and so you watched both seasons, I assume?
Yes, I did. Yeah. Yeah, I did watch both.
I'm going to read day number 59 of the 80 Days of 80 More Things. And if you want to see the 80 Days of 80 More Things, just search the hashtag 80 More Things on Twitter, and you'll be able to find them there. So day 59 is, the state claimed that Stephen and Brendan cut Teresa's hair in Stephen's trailer, yet not one single hair of hers was ever found there. hashtag should have been hair everywhere. So do you have any thoughts on that thing, Mitch?
Yeah, actually, I do. I'm glad we're talking about that today. With my involvement with the courts, I have met some, like you said, I met some people along the way, and I've met somebody who works with a crime scene cleanup company. And I talked to him about the case and even brought up the hair that was mentioned in Brandon's confession, or confession, as we all induce confession, I should say. And if they had cut her hair, human hair, I was told, is much finer than pet hair. So now we all who have cats and dogs and such, they shed in the house, the hair gets everywhere, it sticks to everything like a magnet. You never can get all of it. So even if they took a small portion, let's say for a trophy, like Stephen wanted a trophy or something like that, it would have got on everything. It would have been on the mattress. It would have been on the framework. It would have been on the floor. Any footwork that would have, people walking in that room, it would have grabbed on and moved to the other parts of the room. So there's just no way that there was no hair found. So that's just one of those million things that just doesn't add up with this case.
Yeah, there were lots of things not found in the bedroom that should have been there, like scratches on the bedpost were not found. There was no blood. There was no DNA. There was no DNA of Teresa's anywhere in the entire place.
No, and along with that, especially in the bedroom, if the story they claimed of what they did, there would have been semen. You know, even if they used condoms, there would have been semen leakage. There was leakage, excuse me. There was nothing of that on the mattress whatsoever, and on the floor and such. You know, and as we all kind of jokingly say on the thread, you know, Stephen obviously had this leave no traces bleach that no one else can buy anywhere because he cleaned this place to an inch of its life and managed to put the dust and the grime and the filth right back where it was. And it's just another laughable moment in this case.
That's always been my thing, is not only did he not clean it, I mean, you can look at the trailer and see that he was not, you know, a neat freak, but you see dust and grime and dirt and like the rings on the furniture from where they put a glass with condensation or a coffee mug or something. You can see that still there, and it's still sticky. It's not just a mark that was left after you clean it off. Like that gunk is still there. There's no way that was cleaned and that was put back there when they were there a week later videotaping and taking pictures. There's no way. It's not possible.
Yeah, exactly. And it just, again, you know, with everything they claimed that happened to her on that bed, you know, the mattress, there's just no way the mattress was cleaned perfectly, especially with bleach, as my buddy told me. He said, bleach is just not the all magical cleaner that everybody thinks that it does. It still leaves traces. So obviously, either, like you said, he had the super cleaning bleach that we know, you know, none of us can have, or obviously these guys had no clue what they're doing as far as forensic work. So, or they were just lying what they found.
And there are photos of when they were searching the bedroom of the detective sitting on the bed. Who does that?
Right?
Like, let's call cross-contamination. Thank you very much. Yeah, you know, exactly. So it's just, at times it's laughable. Of course, it's not laughable because we've got two innocent people that have been in prison for many years for something they certainly did not do. You know, it just doesn't add up whatsoever, and especially like we're talking about the hair right there. It would have been everywhere, even if they had taken a small amount. You know, it would have, like I said, it would have grabbed on and everything. And there's just no way that Stephen and Brandon, if he helped him as well as they claimed that he did, you know, cleaned it up like that.
So you have some connections with people that do crime scene cleanup, and you've had some discussions with some of them about this stuff.
Yes, you know, with my buddy that I'm glad I've become friends with as well. You know, like I said, along with the bleach, a couple things that just don't add up as well is the time factor that would have been involved for such a cleanup between the bedroom and the garage. And when they, with this crime scene company, go and clean a murder scene, especially ones that had maybe stab wounds or gunshot wounds as well, you're talking about days worth of work with a team of people. And even with everything that they have for cleaning, he said, you can still find traces. He said, there's no such thing as the perfect clean. So they can do the best work that they can, and it looks wonderful. And then you can go in there and you could still find traces if you know how to look. So again, there was just no way that this clean job happened in that trailer or in that garage as well.
Right. And in the garage, they actually jackhammered the floor looking for evidence and found nothing, except eventually they found the bullet, the magical dust repelling bullet.
Quote unquote found. But back to the clean job in the garage. The other thing is that they went in there to see if they could find any of Teresa's DNA. And they were trying to say that Brendan helped Stephen clean the garage with bleach to get rid of Teresa's DNA, but they found Stephen's DNA all over it. So their magic bleach was able to clean Teresa's DNA, but leave Stephen's there apparently, right? And not leave a trace of the bleach, as well.
Yeah, and with the garage as well, what they claimed he did, he shot her. A lot of things we talk about the blood splatter, we hear that a lot, but we forget about one other thing: the brain matter. These bullets, but that close of a range with that kind of weapon, had to have gone through her skull. They just didn't lodge in her skull and stayed right there. They had to have gone through. So there would have been skull fragments all over that garage. There would have been blood all over that garage. There would have been brain matter all over that garage, and there was none, according to them. So Stephen would have had to clean, and we've seen the pictures of the garage. There was equipment everywhere. It was a workman's garage with grease and grime and such. Stephen would have had to clean every inch of that garage again with Brendan, all the equipment. So it would have been sparkly clean as well. They would have had to move all the equipment out because blood and brain matter, as I've been told, gets everywhere. Absolutely, all the nooks and crannies everywhere. So if they had done that magical clean job they claimed they did, they would have found the magic bullet, because they would have had to gone back in that corner and move the equipment, and boom, there she is. But no, they decided, let's just leave it so that way we can get in trouble. That's, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, it's the time factor. Again, it takes a company, a team of players, as my buddy says, days to clean an area. They were on the clock. And between the two of them working all night for how many days? No way this did not happen. And the garage was old as well. It had cracks in the floor as well. So things would have gone down into the cracks. You just can't pour that magic bleach into the cracks and it's going to dissolve everything there as well. It would have gone down into the floor as well. And of course, they jackhammered the floor.
And didn't find anything.
Of course not.
One other thing I want to point out is, so in the recently released phone calls between Stephen and Jody, when Jody was in jail, those phone calls were recorded because she was in jail. And on October 30th, they mentioned something about Brendan cleaning the garage on October 30th. So that tells me that this whole elaborate story about Brendan cleaning up the blood in the garage that somehow smells like motor oil happened on October 30th.
Right.
I just want to put that out there. That's just a comment, not really a question.
Well, it's a good point, though. It's a good point, because when they're in court and they're talking about, or if they said it in court, but when they're talking about, we have these pants with these bleach stains on them, and Brendan was helping him clean the garage, and he said that he helped him clean the garage or whatever. They didn't play the phone call between Stephen and Jody on the 30th and talk about how they actually cleaned the garage on the 30th. So the jury didn't hear that.
No, the jury believes he cleaned it on the 31st because that's what they were told. Exactly.
And they misrepresented that. That's what we all thought too. But they misrepresented it because the recording of the phone call was not played. And they didn't hear that. They didn't have that information. Now that we have that information, now that we have a lot of information, we're finding out a lot of things that nobody knew because they didn't tell anybody, because the state didn't tell anyone. They didn't release this information. And they're going to say, oh, we didn't think it was relevant.
So the judges in these cases, in both trials, I think, seemed to treat the prosecution with deference in both cases, I felt. Mitch, you work with judges
Yeah, there was,
regularly.
yeah, I do. There was certainly a lot of latitude given to Kratz in both trials. And just my own opinion is I do think that the judges were a part of this. There just was too much that was really should have been inadmissible. Basically, with my talk with my buddy who's a federal judge here in Ohio, he basically told me right from the get-go that with Kratz's little press conference that he had and the statements that he made, he would have, if he would have been the judge in that case, he would have ended it right there, because Kratz violated multiple statutes when it comes to that. They're not allowed to present things that are not factual, that are not in evidence scenarios. It's just the facts of the case that they're supposed to present in press conferences. But what did Kratz do? He told the world exactly how it happened. So the jury was tainted and it was over right there. So, the trial was already done before it began. And that was so sad.
And I think that was their way of getting Brendan's testimony into evidence, because Brendan didn't testify at Stephen's trial, and his confession was not entered into evidence in Stephen's trial. So the way they got that into evidence was to taint the jury with it before the trial ever started.
Exactly. And so, there was no way that they were going to get an impartial jury, did not hear something about it whatsoever. And of course, now we're hearing so many things now about who was on the jury that shouldn't have been on the jury. And now the jurors have been visited when they were doing deliberations and when they weren't in session and such again. So, all these little wonderful things after the fact as well. So, but, again, what Kratz did right from the get-go, it was planned. He knew what he was doing. As much as a narcissist as we think that he is, he actually has maybe 2 cents of brains. I don't know, maybe just a little, but just enough to do things the way he wanted them. And the way, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, he's not stupid. He's
not
smart,
stupid.
For sure.
He is,
yeah.
he is
Go
smart.
ahead. Continue.
He's sinister. He's absolutely sinister, evil. I've heard that so many times. As many people read of me on Twitter, I call him the Predator. Predator Kratz. It's a title that fits so well because it's just the way that he acts as well. But again, the trial should have been over before it even started. Right there, there should have been a mistrial right at the beginning there, and there wasn't. And again, the latitude that was presented, was given to Kratz with the witnesses. As we all seen, oh my gosh, he was giving so many hand signals out there. She should have been a third base coach. We all saw that as well, especially when Deborah, the county coroner, came up on stand. And he basically gave her, if you talk, you're dead. Kind of a signal.
He was glaring her down big time.
He was. Yeah,
was
that part
awful.
frustrated me when she was on the stand, and when they were trying to talk about, when the defense was trying to talk about Teresa's voicemails, and Kratz objected and was saying, if they're trying to say that she was still alive, and they're saying, no, that's not what we're trying to say at all. We're trying to say that somebody accessed her voicemail and deleted messages, and we want to know who that is. Do you know who that is? And what Kratz said to the judge was completely off. It wasn't even in response to what he just said. It was like off topic, completely irrelevant, saying, well, if they're trying to suggest blah, 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 that is not what he even said, not even close. And the judge went with it. Like, the judge was completely like, oh, well, I don't see why that's relevant. Okay, did you even listen to what the defense just said to you?
It was the judge's own question, too. It was the judge's own question. He's like, oh, well, that's not relevant.
That's not right. Exactly. And that amazes me because, I've noticed that lawyers who have been before that judge before, they know each other. So they know how to talk to each other. They know how to communicate with each other. And one of the things that lawyers do is they are good at finding loopholes, and they are good at finding a way to accomplish whatever it is they are trying to accomplish. So if they're trying to get a conviction, they're going to do whatever little tricks they need to do to get that conviction. If they're trying to get somebody found not guilty, they're going to do whatever little tricks they can to get that person found not guilty. That's what their job is as a lawyer, right? So Kratz knew that judge and knew how to talk to him and knew the things to say and knew the way to operate in order to get the things that he wanted to happen, which, I don't know that for sure. It's not like I saw a conversation between the two of them, but that's just how it kind of works, right? And so it really frustrated me when I was watching that and I saw that interaction where the defense was trying to bring up something that was pretty important. Somebody deleted voicemails. What did those say? Do you know who accessed that? We need to be able to investigate this and find out when this happened and information about it. And the judge didn't even let them proceed with that because Kratz was like, oh, it's not relevant because they're trying to say that she was still alive. That is not even close to what he just said. So it's little things like that that frustrated me, that sort of stalled the defense from being able to make progress where they should have been able to make progress.
In my field, that's called deflecting.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. And Kratz is a self-proclaimed addict, so we'll just give him that for a moment, that he's an addict. Addicts love to deflect. So, it turned it around, change the subject, and it's not on me anymore. Now it's something on something totally different. And he's great at that. He did that so many times in the trial, not just with the messages as well, but there was other areas as well. He would just, when he knew he was in a corner, he would start deflecting, and then it went off into another direction.
He still does that. He was doing that with me the other day, but yeah.
So
you're his new best friend.
Well, he stopped responding to me, so I think he's on to somebody else.
So they did do a change of venue for this trial, for Stephen's trial. Stephen's trial was not in Manitowoc. It was in Calumet County, right?
Yes, and they didn't go very far. This thing should have been held out of state if possible, just with the publicity that it came with it and with Kratz setting things up prior to that. In my talks with the federal judge here, there's three little words that don't seem to ring very well in Wisconsin, and that is conflict of interest. And it's basically what I was told, and I agree, and we've heard this before, that Manitowoc County should have never had 1 second involvement in this thing whatsoever. Even from the first call, this thing should have gone to Calumet or even another county, and there should have been zero involvement with Manitowoc because of the civil suit, and as well. And of course, what did we see? Manitowoc ran point. They found the key evidence, and they were there for everything. And they, as they were said, Kratz and his buddy said there, well, oh, they're just providing equipment and resources. No, they're running. They're running point. Oh my gosh! And just, again, just for me, that's where I think that especially Judge Willis had some involvement with this,
because Judge Willis was requested specifically. They said, yeah, we can move the venue, but we want Judge Willis and nobody else. And we're going to bring the jury from Manitowoc. So what's the point? I don't get the point of moving the venue if they're just going to bring bus everybody over there anyway. But what really interests me is the fact that they insisted that Judge Willis had to be the one.
Part of the team. So I don't know how much involvement but he had, but the leeway that he gave to Kratz and some of the rulings that he did, it just certainly showed favoritism to the prosecution. Now, he did throw a few things Stephen's way, but I think that was just for show, as well, because, like I said from the get-go, this conflict of interest thing is just hilarious. And then Kratz throws that little card out there when Deborah's on the stand, and she had nothing to do with the civil suit from '85 whatsoever, and she was threatened off the case as well, and and as our buddy Kratz says, those coroners, all they do is kick the bodies, so she just another joke.
She's basically the only one that didn't have involvement in the case for the civil suit.
Exactly.
Oh, yes. Exactly. And our good buddies Bert and Ernie, Lincoln Colburn, oh my gosh. I mean, those are two of the heavy hitters with conflict of interest. And what do? Oh, they're there when the magical key appears. They were involved with everything, and
every
everything.
piece of evidence that was found, every piece of quote evidence that
Yes.
was found by them, those two.
Exactly. And everything that was found by Manitowoc County should have been inadmissible. In probably any other state, you probably would have got that ruling or some of that ruling. But in that particular area, obviously, like I said, the fix was in. So everything that's inadmissible everywhere else in the world is admissible in Calumet County and Manitowoc County. So
now, Fassbender and Weaker were Calumet, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, they were Calumet. So, and I think that I don't know, I feel like they got away with the evidence they found. I'm using bunny ears. The listeners won't be able to see this. The evidence they found being admissible is by saying, oh yeah, but there was somebody from Calumet supervising them. Really?
Yeah, that was their excuse for no report Jacobs not writing any reports too, was that he was assisting Calumet, so
he was assisting Calumet. Yeah, and that's what he said himself. I was assisting Calumet, so I didn't write a report.
I've got to add in, that was from your episode. I loved it when you talked about no reports Jacobs. And my involvement, when I work with the course, one thing I have to do is I have to document everything. Every word, every action that I do has to be documented and written in such a way that it can be presented as evidence in a hearing if it's necessary. So Jacobs saying, well, I mean, Calumet's running lead, so I don't need to write a report because I'm not involved here. They are trained to document everything they do because it has to be presented in court. So this idea that he just didn't write anything down is just total garbage.
Well, the reason why I think is because they never have. They've never done it. I mean, you can go back in time and you can see that there have been other cases in Manitowoc where the police work was kind of questionable, and I think that they're just used to doing work that way. Like, they're not used to doing things the way things are supposed to be done. And it's never been a problem before, so they'll just keep doing it that way. And I've said this from the very, very beginning. They didn't expect the entire world to be watching them. They've been getting away with it for so long, and being able to do it this way and slack off and not do it the way one would expect them to do it, because that's the way they've been doing it forever. And they didn't expect the whole world to be looking, because why is the whole world going to look at a small little place like Manitowoc when,
right. Who cares about Stephen Avery?
Yeah,
nobody cares about
this. Nobody
Stephen
cares
Avery.
about this. Yeah,
exactly.
Right. So they just figured that, oh, it's not a big deal. And so now they're trying to cover up their tracks because, and sweep it under the rug and play cover up, because now they're in trouble and they're like, well, crap, what do we do now? Like, this has never been a problem before. We can't lose everything we've ever worked for. And so they're panicking, and I understand that, but that doesn't make it okay.
Yes, they didn't expect the outpour of support and sympathy that came from making a murder. They weren't, they had no idea. They thought you talked about the questionable cases in the past, certainly the rape in '85, the hit and run in '99 that involved as well. It just They had their own little way of doing things and keeping things quiet to themselves. And this little documentary comes in and blows everything wide open. And
Yeah.
like you said, they're panicking now
Mhm.
because us, as my wife calls us, us armchair detectives, have discovered all these wonderful pieces of evidence that just shows how wrong the case is.
Mhm.
So we're talking with Mitch Stockdale. Mitch, you had said something about warrant issues at some point. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, as we all know, with the trailer, 7 searches, which again, ridiculous. Okay. With my talk with my friend who's the federal judge, a warrant calls on for 1 search, maybe 2 at best. If they need to be searching more, this requires more probable cause, new warrants to be issued as well. And what did we get? You got 1 warrant, 7 searches. So problem right there. But again, where are we at? You know, Calumet, Manitowoc County, Wisconsin, which seems to be, we have our own set of rules. So, you got 1 warrant, have as many searches as you want.
I did not know that. I did not know that they just had the 1 warrant and kept using that one to go back and go back and go back.
Well, are the rules for warrants different in federal cases than they are in, like, say, when it's a county jurisdiction? Like, are the rules different? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I'm
I don't know for sure either, but
I
I
don't
think
know.
warrants definitely have to be very specific
I know
for exactly
that,
what they're looking
but
for, and it's only for a certain period of time,
mhm.
and
Yes.
like you say, a certain number of times.
Yeah. Like I said, my buddy says maybe two times off 1 is what you're going to get. Anything else, you got to have better have good reasons why you need to go back in. And again, you need to apply for new warrants as well. So, as we all know, the magical key that just appeared on the 7th search because they just didn't discover it in their words and such. The problem wasn't just my opinion, is the first 6 times it couldn't drop the key. So because they did have a babysitter, he may not have been doing his job very well, but they still had a babysitter in there. So I just think the time was just not right for old Colburn to drop the magic key in the bedroom. And so, go ahead.
I don't think Colbert dropped the key.
Oh, was it? Was it?
It was Link.
I was Link. I'm sorry, Link. Okay, I'm sorry. I was
Yeah,
Link.
but Colburn claimed to shake the thing around, and there were still coins sitting on top of it. So that was bullcrap. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Mitch. I'm sorry.
No, you're exactly right. So I just think they just didn't have the opportunity at the time, because again, I've also talked to detectives as well and talking about searches. The searches that you see like on TV a lot of times are very accurate. I mean, when they go and toss a room, they toss a room. I mean, they pull every drawer out. They dump everything out. Everything's on the floor. The place is a mess. They don't clean it up afterwards. How do we see this room? It was just the normal mess that Stephen left. There, it just, and they would have found that key on the first search. If it was really there, it was lodged in that cabinet, they would have found it the first time, and that without even shaking the cabinet, because they would have taken everything out of that cabinet. They would have gone down every inch of that cabinet with their fingers and looked at every nook, every cranny, any possible opening to find any pieces of evidence. So that, so again, 7 searches and then the key shows up. No, thank you.
And they spent a lot of time in that tiny little room too.
Yeah, you saw the pictures. The whole trailer is.
The room looked like it had been tossed when Jody came back.
Yeah, when she came home from jail and she was looking for her purse, the room looked tossed. I mean, there were drawers out and clothes all over the place. It was just a pile of stuff. But when they took the picture of, the key, and they were like, oh yeah, there were just a pair of slippers by the door. And that was on the 7th search. Like, when did you actually toss the bedroom? Because you've been in there 6 times already and you haven't tossed the bedroom. What have you been doing this whole time?
Exactly. Exactly. The key, if the key was there, it would have been found on the first search. There's just no question. So, I mean, they're obviously which we all know they are idiots, but they're obviously the worst cops that you've ever seen known to mankind as far as their skills in searching a room. But, it would have been, if it was there, it would have been found the first time. There's just no question without shaking a cabinet. The magic shake too, for the cabinet as well. Just wow.
Just to remind everyone, we're talking to Mitch Stockdale today. And Julie, I know you've been talking to who we strongly suspect is Ken Kratz. He's been very active on Twitter and particularly on Paul Capaldi's videos. And we know he's been releasing his own videos recently in the lead up to his re-release of what he calls a book. So Mitch, you have some insights into his behavior, I think.
Yeah, I do. He's almost humorous, the way he shares especially on Twitter, as well as far as his behaviors. But to go back when everything kind of hit the fan with the sexting drama and such, he blamed everything on his addiction. It was his sex addiction. It was his addiction to narcotics, and that's what made him do all this. And it just does. That's not the way it works with the disease of addiction. Yes, it plays a part in. Go ahead.
I just want to interject really quick. If you don't know anything about Ken Kratz and his addiction issues and his sexting scandals and etc., Paul Capaldi recently did a series of videos, which I'll link to in the show notes, of discussing the victims of Ken Kratz during that time. So I'll make sure to link that in the show notes. Okay, go ahead, Mitch.
No, thank you. As well, you're right. He's been talking about it quite a bit. And, well, like I said, Kratz, blamed everything on his addiction. His addiction made him do it. And so it was his addiction that made him the bad guy that he is. And, first of all, like I said, it's not the way it works with this disease. And like I said, it is a disease, but the person who is afflicted with this disease is accountable and responsible for the choices and the actions that they make with this before and after as well. And as our favorite predator has been telling us, that he went through this treatment and he did the step work and he's recovered. Well, recovery is a lifelong process. It continues on and on. And what we have seen the last couple of years, especially now, it's been popping up on the internet. You see Kratz at baseball games with beers in his hand. The one interview that he did, that he was probably high as a kite, as everybody remembers as well. That's not recovery. He has relapsed as well. So he's certainly right back into the behaviors that he was doing when he was in active addiction. And how I know this, I work with addicts every day with my job, and I'm also in recovery myself. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for almost 7 years and 5 months. And I still work a program of recovery every day, because that's what you need to do. For me, I need to do to stay sober. So there's no recovered, as he once said. It's recovery, and it continues.
So I just watched that it wasn't even a recent interview. It was an interview from 2016, I think.
Yeah.
And they talked a little bit, and then they moved to get in a more comfortable position, I guess. And they were both drinking something. It looked like wine to me. But he kept saying, "Oh, I don't do that thing anymore. I don't do that stuff anymore." But clearly he was drinking some kind of alcohol.
Yes. And so that certainly is not recovery.
No.
Textbook recovery, and in my world of recovery as well. And so he's certainly backed in what we call active addiction. And you certainly could see that with the way he has become so defensive with people calling him out on his stuff as well. If he was truly working a program of recovery, he would say, yes, that was me. I was responsible. I feel that I'm a better person today, such and such. But what he's just doing is keeps blowing it off, deflecting like he did in court as well. And he just turns it all around and tries to change the subject and say that happened a long time ago and blah, blah, blah. So, no, so he's certainly, in my professional and personal opinion, is nowhere near recovery or beginning it whatsoever. And so. And then, of course, she's wife number 24 now or something like that. That's his daughter, right? I can't remember if it's wife or daughter.
She is very young. That's true.
Yeah. Well, they say, what kind of a man dates or marries a woman half his age? The kind who can. That it's just, a little humor. I heard that joke.
Very little.
In regards to Michael Douglas, actually,
yes.
since we were talking about Romancing the Stone earlier, that's when I first heard that joke. But anyway, I have actually heard Kratz say, or read him type, I guess, that, with the sexting scandal and issues that he did, that he apologized and that he shouldn't have done it, and that, he feels bad, or, that he wishes it wouldn't have happened, or, all of the things that you were saying when you apologize. Now, I don't personally believe that his apology was sincere. However, he did say it. So he did say those things. He didn't deflect on that occasion. And whether I believe it was sincere or not isn't really, a fact of the matter, but he does deflect with a lot of things. And he does try to use that apology to deflect from everything else that he's not apologizing for, and deflect from everything else that he's not admitting. I'm getting heated and yelling again. I'm sorry. I do that.
No.
I tend to do that when I get upset about something, but he is doing that. And regardless of whether or not he has said, yeah, that was something I did, and it was stupid and it was ridiculous and I shouldn't have done it and I'm sorry. He has said those things, but saying it and meaning it are two completely different things.
And he's not consistent with it, though. You might have heard him say that, but when people bring it out as well, especially like with the Mad Scotsman Paul bringing it out, and as well, he goes nuts on Twitter about that stuff as well, and his story changes all the time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it does, and he tries to put words in other people's mouths. He's done that with me. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, you keep saying this and this, and I never said it at all. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I am not the embodiment of every supporter. Like, just because 50 other supporters said it doesn't mean I said it. Yeah. We all have our own thoughts and ideas. We don't all have the same thoughts and ideas. We don't.
That's the truth.
Yeah, we don't. Yes. Even if we're all supporters, we don't all have the same thoughts and ideas. There's so many different opinions and theories out there.
Yes.
Well, he's been talking, or he did talk recently about, he's been talking a lot about Brendan, because Brendan is requesting clemency. So he has come out, and now he's trying to rewrite history, where he had said in an interview with Dr. Drew several years ago, and this is one of the 80 things as well. He said in the interview that Brendan had been manipulated and that his confession was a false confession. He said those things. Now he's trying to rewrite that, and I just saw something earlier today, and actually, one moment. I'm just going to find what he actually said.
Sure.
Bean Green had asked him something about that quote on the Dr. Drew show. And he responded first of all by insulting Bean Green, which I won't read that here because I don't want to give him that. From when he said, with the false confession and the manipulation of this young man, he is now changing that to read, with the false confession issue and just what they allege to be the manipulation of this young man. So he's trying to rewrite history here by claiming that he said something other than what he actually said. And I get very angry when I hear that. When I read that today, it made me very angry.
I would get angry too.
Yes, and he does that a lot, and people are calling him out on it with evidence. They show him the transcripts of stuff and things that he said, and he's still everybody's lying. I didn't say that as well.
But Kratz.
Show me once where I said sweat DNA. Cue 50 responses of recordings of him saying it out of his own voice. Show me once. I'll do you one better.
Well. We're all lying. We're just all lying. Yes.
Right. We somehow doctored up these recordings and transcripts of him saying sweat DNA.
Because you know what? We are just as good at audio manipulation as Stephen Avery is at cleaning a trailer.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. What it is.
Do you remember though, he told us recently that 40 million of us were all duped by making a murderer, because I know how it happened. There were subliminal messages in the documentary. And we all were transformed into this way of believing that there was a conspiracy. I mean,
Right.
wow,
Yep.
there's the answer. It's all,
That's
there
it.
it is.
Well, I'm so glad you figured it out.
Oh,
We didn't even need Scooby-Doo
no, you didn't, did you?
Yeah,
or her tambourine.
we didn't sit down and read any of the transcripts or any of the
No,
documents or look at
no.
any of the photos or use our
No.
brains to think about what the timeline could possibly have looked like.
No.
No, because they're expecting everybody to be as clueless as the people who are choosing to trust that what the police department and law enforcement are doing, not the police department, what law enforcement are doing is protecting them. Because nobody wants to feel like their law enforcement is not protecting them. Nobody wants to feel that way. And so they are just assuming that the rest of the world is going to be that blind and is going to just ignore it. And we're not going anywhere.
Hi, everyone. I'm hopping in here because we have run out of time for this episode of 80 More Things. From here, things get pretty personal and heartfelt, so be sure to come back again in 1 week for the rest of the conversation with our guest, Mitch Stockdale. In the meantime, please visit Mitch on Twitter. You can find him under the handle @TeamStockdale. Also, don't forget to sign the petition to Governor Evers on the website bringbrendanhome.org. You can visit our website at 80morethings.com for links to other resources, and there you'll find a contact form if you want to send us a message. We will see you next week. Until then,
Let's keep talking about Avery. Yeah, let's keep talking